The scent of aged paper and warm vanilla was Alara's constant companion, a perfume she wouldn't trade for all the designer fragrances in the world. It clung to her soft wool sweaters, nestled in the strands of her auburn hair, and was an invisible, comforting blanket that enveloped her small, cherished world. Her shop, The Written Word, was a haven in the heart of Oakhaven, a town known for its cobblestone streets, gaslight lamps, and an unwavering commitment to preserving its historic charm. Alara had inherited the shop, along with her grandmother's meticulous hands and an almost preternatural ability to coax life back into disintegrating texts, a decade ago. It wasn't just a business. It was a living, breathing entity, with shelves groaning under the weight of stories, each spine a silent promise of adventure, solace, or forgotten wisdom. Sunlight, filtered through the antique lace curtains, dappled the worn Persian rugs and illuminated dust motes dancing in the quiet air, like tiny, golden secrets. Her mornings began with a cup of Earl Grey tea, brewed strong and steaming, cradled in a chipped ceramic mug that had belonged to her grandmother. She'd sit at her sturdy oakwork table, still cool from the night, and listen to the gentle hum of the old town waking up outside. The distant clang of the baker's delivery truck, the melodious chime of the clock tower, the occasional friendly bark from Mrs. Gable's terrier, these were the soft chords of her peaceful existence. Alara was a creature of habit, finding comfort in routine, yet beneath her quiet demeanor beat a heart that yearned for stories beyond the pages she painstakingly mended. She loved her solitary craft, the meditative focus of stitching, gluing, and pressing, but sometimes, especially on long, rainy afternoons, a faint echo of loneliness would whisper through the quiet aisles, a yearning for a story of her own that wasn't bound in leather or linen. Today, however, was a Tuesday, a day usually reserved for invoicing and like cataloging. The morning started predictably enough. She checked the small handwritten note pinned to the corkboard. Mrs. Henderson's worn gardening journal needed a new cover. Mr. Finch's collection of Victorian poetry required delicate page repair. Each task was a familiar dance of precision and care. Just as she was settling in, a heavy thud against the shop door startled her. The bell above tinkled, signaling not a customer, but the postman, a burly man named Gus, who usually just left packages on the step. Today, however, he was holding something large and awkwardly wrapped. "Morning, Alara," Gus grunted, his face a little flushed from exertion. "Got a special delivery for you. No return address on the label, just the written word and your name. And it's heavy, like someone sent you a brick of gold." He set a large, unassuming package on her counter with a soft, high chinking. Alara frowned. This was unusual. Most clients either dropped off items themselves or arranged for courier services with detailed paperwork. This package was wrapped in plain, thick brown paper, secured with twine, and sealed with a blob of dark red wax. It felt old, almost rustic, like something from a forgotten era. "Thank you, Gus," she said, her fingers already tracing the rough texture of the paper. "Have a good day." He nodded, adjusted his cap, and was off, leaving behind a faint scent of rain and damp canvas. Alara returned to the package, her curiosity piqued. She carefully cut the twine with her letter opener, a beautiful silver blade gifted to her by her grandmother. The paper peeled away to reveal a simple, unadorned wooden box, crafted from dark, unvarnished oak. It was smooth to the touch, and the faint scent of cedar and something else, something sweet and earthy, drifted from it. Inside, nestled on a bed of fine crimson velvet, lay a journal. Alara gasped softly. It was undeniably ancient, its leather cover a deep, mossy green, faded and worn smooth in places. But it was also damaged. Not just aged, but almost violently so. A significant portion of the cover was dark with what looked like water stains, but deeper, almost charred in places, as if it had been exposed to both a flood and a fire, yet somehow survived. The spine was split, the pages within warped and delicate. Her heart gave a strange lurch, a mix of professional dismay and profound fascination. This wasn't just damage, it was a story in itself. She carefully lifted the journal, its weight surprising her. It felt dense, substantial, as if infused with the very history it contained. Tucked beneath it, on the velvet, was a single sheet of cream-colored paper. She unfolded it to reveal elegant, sloping handwriting, penned in dark, rich ink. Why, dear Miss Elara Vance? She understand you possess a unique talent for breathing life back into forgotten narratives. This journal holds a story of immense personal significance, one that has weathered many storms, both literal and metaphorical. It requires not just repair, but a resurrection. I trust your discretion and your artistry implicitly. You, shoo, equal. Please restore it to its former glory, preserving every detail, every whisper of its past. When your work is complete, please return it to the address provided on the accompanying shipping label. There is no urgency, only the desire for perfection. And with deepest respect, Dart 2. When you die. Elara turned the note over, looking for contact information, a phone number, an email address. There was nothing. Just the elegant initial and the instruction to use the return label, she now noticed, was indeed tucked under the velvet. It was printed, not handwritten, providing only a name, Rysk, and a P.O. box address in a town she'd never heard of, nestled deep in the mountains, several hours away. A shiver of intrigue ran down her spine. This was unlike any commission she'd ever received. It was shrouded in mystery, an unspoken challenge. The journal itself seemed to hum with a quiet energy, a silent plea for healing. She carried the journal to her work table, carefully placing it on a soft felt mat. Her magnifying lamp illuminated the intricate details of its distress. The leather, once supple, was now brittle in places, the gold tooling on its edges almost entirely worn away. The pages within, what she could glimpse through the damaged spine, were a patchwork of dark stains and delicate, almost translucent edges. There was a faint scent emanating from the journal now that it was out of its box. Not just cedar, but something else. Something floral, like jasmine or honeysuckle, mingled with the earthy smell of damp soil and ancient paper. It was a peculiar, almost intoxicating aroma. She spent the entire afternoon simply observing it, making notes. She photographed every angle, every tear, every faded mark. Her fingers, usually so sure and deft, moved with an almost reverent caution. This wasn't just a book. It felt like a living artifact, a piece of someone's soul. As she gently fanned a few of the looser pages, she noticed something extraordinary. Embedded within the pulp of the paper, barely visible to the naked eye, were tiny, iridescent flecks, like powdered moonlight, or microscopic fragments of pearl. They shimmered faintly under the lamp, giving the paper a subtle, ethereal quality. And then, there were the symbols. Faintly sketched in the margins, almost invisible beneath the water damage, were small, intricate patterns she couldn't immediately identify, swirls, knots, delicate branches. They looked vaguely Celtic, or perhaps something even older. The script itself was a challenge. It was an elegant, flowing hand, but the ink had bled and faded in many places. What she could decipher seemed to be a mix of languages. Latin, certainly in a few fragmented phrases, but also something that looked like Old English, and perhaps another more archaic tongue she couldn't place. It was a beautiful, cryptic puzzle. Elara found herself enchanted. This wasn't merely a restoration job. It was an archaeological dig into the heart of a forgotten narrative. The words preserving every detail, every whisper of its past resonated deeply within her. She felt an almost spiritual connection to the unknown a sense of shared respect for the profound power of stories. Days turned into weeks. The journal became her obsession, her quiet companion. She researched ancient papers, obscure inks, and forgotten binding techniques. She experimented with gentle cleaning solutions, carefully testing them on the least damaged sections. The work was painstaking, requiring a level of patience and precision that pushed even her formidable skills. She built a humidification chamber to gently relax the warped pages, a delicate process that took days. Then came the meticulous task of cleaning each page, removing the debris and surface grime without disturbing the fragile ink or the shimmering flecks. She used tiny brushes, cotton swabs, and specialized archival sponges, her breath held, her focus absolute. As she slowly, painstakingly, brought the pages back from the brink, more of the script became legible. She started to piece together fragments of sentences, tantalizing glimpses into the journal's content. It seemed to be a blend of scientific observation, philosophical musings, and what sounded like personal reflections on nature, on ancient lore, on the interconnectedness of things. There were references to the veiled paths, the murmurs of the earth, and the language of the quiet places. The name Whisper kept recurring, not as a title, but as a concept, a guiding principle. It seemed to refer to a subtle energy, an unspoken communication that permeated the natural world. It was a beautiful, haunting concept, and Alara found herself thinking about it long after she'd closed up shop for the night. She started listening more intently to the wind through the eaves, the rustle of leaves, the soft patter of rain. She felt as if the journal was opening her senses, not just to its own story, but to the whispers of the world around her. One particularly blustery Tuesday afternoon, nearly a month after the journal's arrival, Alara was deep in concentration, carefully restitching the spine. The rhythmic hum of the needle through the old leather, the scent of beeswax and ancient paper, filled her small workroom at the back of the shop. Rain lashed against the windows, a comforting backdrop to her meticulous work. The soft chime of the shop doorbell echoed through the quiet space. Alara usually heard it, but today her focus was absolute. She heard footsteps, slow and deliberate, moving through the main shop, the subtle creak of the old floorboards her only indication of a visitor. Assuming it was Mrs. Gable browsing the poetry section or young Thomas looking for a new fantasy novel, she continued her work. A shadow fell across her work table. She looked up, startled, her needle poised mid-stitch. Standing in the doorway of her workroom, framed by the warm glow of the shop beyond, was a man. He was tall, with broad shoulders encased in a dark, slightly damp overcoat. His hair, the color of rich earth, was windswept, a few strands falling across his forehead. His eyes, a startling shade of hazel flecked with gold, held an arresting gaze that was both intense and gentle. A faint stubble shadowed his strong jawline, and the scent of rain, pine, and something clean and subtly masculine drifted towards her. He held a well-worn leather satchel at his side. He wasn't a local. She knew every face in Oakhaven. His presence felt different, like a quiet force of nature had just stepped into her carefully curated world. "Forgive my intrusion," he said, his voice a low, resonant rumble, like distant thunder, yet incredibly soft. The bell chimed, but I heard no one call out. Alara felt a blush creep up her neck. "Oh, I apologize. I was rather engrossed. Welcome to the written word. Can I help you find anything?" Her voice was a little breathy, a rare occurrence. He didn't immediately answer, his gaze sweeping over her work table, lingering for a moment on the journal, which was meticulously laid open, its newly mended spine gleaming faintly under the lamp. His eyes then returned to hers, a faint, intriguing smile playing on his lips. "I imagine you often get rather engrossed," he said, his tone one of quiet understanding. "Your dedication is palpable even from the doorway." He gestured vaguely at the shop around them. "This is a beautiful space, full of stories." "It is," Alara agreed, feeling a strange pull towards him. There was something in his eyes, a depth, a knowingness that was both unnerving and compelling. "I try to ensure every book finds its voice again." "A noble pursuit," he murmured, taking a slow step further into the workroom, his eyes still exploring, absorbing every detail, the jars of pigments, the antique binding tools, the stacks of raw materials. He moved with a quiet grace that belied his size. "To preserve the past, to mend what time has broken. It's a kind of magic, wouldn't you say?" Alara felt her heart quicken. "I suppose some might call it that. I call it craft, patience, and a deep respect for the written word." She gestured to a small, comfortable armchair in the corner of her workroom, usually reserved for clients waiting for minor repairs. "Please, make yourself comfortable if you'd like to browse. I'm Alara Vance, the owner." He inclined his head slightly, a gesture of old-world politeness. "Reese, Dedish." He didn't offer a surname which struck her as odd, but she didn't press. "And it's a pleasure to meet you, Alara Vance." His voice lingered on her name, making it sound like a whispered secret. He didn't sit, but moved closer to her table, his eyes once again drawn to the journal. His gaze was intense, almost possessive, yet gentle. "You work with rare texts, I see," he observed, his voice soft, almost a whisper. "This one, it looks particularly challenging." Alara felt a thrill of professional pride mixed with a flicker of suspicion. He seemed to know a lot for a casual browser. "It is," she admitted, picking up a small bone folder. It arrived a few weeks ago. Quite a mystery, actually. No proper client details, just an initial and a remote P.O. box. She paused, watching his reaction. His expression remained unreadable, though she noticed a subtle tightening around his eyes. "And you took on the challenge?" he prompted, his voice still low, encouraging. "Of course," she said, a small confident smile touching her lips. "How could I not? It felt important. And the story it contains, what I've managed to decipher so far, it's quite fascinating. It speaks of whispers, of ancient paths, of the earth's quiet language." Reese's eyes finally met hers again, and this time, the intensity was unmistakable. A spark, almost electric, passed between them. It was a moment of profound recognition, a silent understanding that transcended their brief introduction. "The language of the quiet places," he repeated, his voice barely audible above the drumming rain. A genuine warm smile bloomed on his face then, transforming his features, softening the rugged angles. "Indeed, it is a language worth preserving, wouldn't you agree?" Elara found herself nodding, captivated by his smile, by the sudden warmth that seemed to fill the room. "More than anything," she breathed. He reached out a hand, not to touch the journal, but to hover just above it, as if feeling its energy. "And you've done remarkable work, Elara. Truly remarkable. It looks whole again, resurrected, as the note requested." The words hung in the air, a silent confirmation. "R?" Reese died. It clicked into place with a soft thud, like the closing cover of a perfectly bound book. This wasn't a coincidence. He was the owner. He had sent the journal, and he had come to her. A wave of warmth, mixed with a delicious flutter of nerves, spread through her chest. He hadn't introduced himself as the owner, choosing instead to observe her, to see her work, to hear her speak of it with passion. He had wanted to see if she understood the whispers. "You're R," she stated, not as a question, but as a quiet realization. He met her gaze, his smile deepening, a hint of playful mischief in his eyes. "Guilty as charged, Miss Vance. And I must say, your reputation precedes you. Though I suspect even the whispers couldn't fully convey the depth of your skill." Elara felt a blush bloom on her cheeks again, but this time it was accompanied by a burgeoning sense of delight. This quiet, enigmatic man, with his old-world charm and his profound connection to the very essence of her work, had sought her out. He understood. He truly understood. "Thank you," she managed, her voice a little softer than she intended. "It has been a privilege, a true labor of love." He nodded slowly, his gaze still holding hers, an unspoken current flowing between them. "I can see that," he said, his voice dropping to that low, intimate whisper again. "And I'm immensely grateful. Perhaps," he added, a hint of anticipation in his tone, "we could discuss the details of its completion over a cup of tea? I find myself quite drawn to the aroma of your establishment and your company." Elara's heart fluttered like a startled bird. She looked at the rain lashing against the window, the cozy warmth of her shop, and the intriguing man standing before her. The world outside, usually so comforting, suddenly felt like a distant hum. All that mattered was the quiet resonance between them, the shared understanding of ancient whispers and stories waiting to be told. "I'd like that very much, Reese," she replied, a genuine smile gracing her lips, feeling as though a new chapter of her own story had just begun to unfold, softly, beautifully, like the turning of a cherished page. The quiet hum of the shop, which usually felt like an extension of her own peaceful rhythm, now thrummed with a new, vibrant energy. Reese's smile, the way his eyes had crinkled at the corners, the depth of his voice, it all lingered in the air, a sweet, unexpected fragrance. "How about dinner tomorrow evening?" Reese suggested, his voice soft, almost a continuation of the ancient whisper they'd just shared. "There's a lovely little place, the Whispering Spoon, just down by the old clock tower. They do a fantastic lamb stew, and the atmosphere, well, it's quite conducive to good stories." Elara's smile widened. "The Whispering Spoon? I know it well. It's one of my favorites. Tomorrow evening sounds perfect." He nodded, a contented look settling on his face. "Shall we say 7 o'clock? 7 it is." A comfortable silence fell, not awkward, but filled with the unspoken promise of what was to come. Reese reached for the small, leather-bound volume he'd brought in, his fingers brushing hers for a fleeting moment as he took it from the counter. A tiny spark, like static electricity, danced between them. He gave her another warm smile, a silent acknowledgement of the connection, and then, with a respectful nod, turned towards the door. "Until tomorrow, Elira." "Until tomorrow, Reese Didane." The chime of the bell above the door marked his departure, and suddenly, the shop felt both emptier and fuller than before. Elira leaned back against the counter, a soft sigh escaping her lips. She looked around at her beloved shelves, at the stacks of books, the worn armchairs, the scent of paper and brewing tea. It was all still there, familiar and comforting, but now imbued with a fresh layer of anticipation. Reese. His name, when she thought it, felt warm and solid. He was unlike anyone she had met in Willow Creek. Most of the town's residents, while kind and familiar, lived lives that were more outwardly focused, rooted in the tangible rhythms of the seasons and the demands of their trades. Reese, however, seemed to carry a quiet depth, a sense of history and unseen narratives, much like the books she cherished. He saw the world not just as it was, but as it had been, and as it could be, shaped by the echoes of time. She spent the rest of the afternoon in a pleasant haze, her fingers tracing the spines of books, her mind replaying their conversation. The forgotten folk tales, the shared wonder, the easy way their thoughts had woven together. It felt like finding a missing piece to a puzzle she hadn't even realized she was working on. When her friend Maeve popped in later that afternoon for her usual end-of-day coffee, she immediately noticed the change. Maeve, with her bright, discerning eyes and a laugh that could chase away any cloud, owned the bustling bakery across the square. "Elira, my dear, you're practically glowing," Maeve declared, leaning against the counter, a mischievous twinkle in her eye. "What delightful secret are you harboring?" Elira felt a blush creep up her neck. "No secret, Maeve. Just a very interesting customer." Maeve raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. "Oh, do tell." Interesting isn't usually the word you use for Mr. Henderson asking for more copies of the latest detective novel. Elira chuckled. "No, not Mr. Henderson. A new visitor to Willow Creek, I think. Reese. He brought in an old manuscript for me to look at." She paused, choosing her words carefully, trying to convey the spark without sounding overly dramatic. "He understands old stories. The way they breathe, the way they connect us to the past." Maeve watched her, a knowing smile playing on her lips. "Ah, a kindred spirit for the keeper of forgotten tales. And is this, Reese, perhaps the reason for the dinner reservation at the Whispering Spoon tomorrow?" Elara's eyes widened slightly. "How did you know?" "Darling, Willow Creek is a small town, and Mrs. Higgins, bless her cotton socks, works part-time at the Spoon and happens to be a regular at my bakery. She mentioned a booking for the mysterious new man in our lovely Elira. Gossip travels faster than a summer breeze on market day. Gossip travels faster than a summer breeze on market day." Maeve laughed, a warm, comforting sound. "But seriously, I'm thrilled for you. You deserve someone who sees the magic you do." A warmth spread through Elira's chest, a mix of mild embarrassment and genuine gratitude for Maeve's perceptiveness. "Thank you, Maeve." "Now," Maeve said, pushing off the counter, "go home, get some rest, and for goodness sake, wear something that makes you feel utterly magnificent." This is a story in the making, after all. The next day, Elira found herself humming as she went about her tasks. She chose a dress she loved, a soft emerald green that hinted at the forest and the ancient things she held dear, with a delicate silver pendant shaped like a single leaf. She styled her hair simply, letting a few strands frame her face, and opted for minimal makeup, wanting to feel like herself, just a slightly more polished version. The small rituals of getting ready felt special, imbued with a quiet excitement she hadn't felt in years. At precisely 7 o'clock, she walked into the Whispering Spoon. The restaurant lived up to its name, with its low, intimate lighting, dark wooden beams, and the gentle murmur of conversation that never quite rose above a whisper. The scent of herbs and slow-cooked food hung invitingly in the air. Reese was already there, seated at a corner table near a window that overlooked the softly lit square. He stood as she approached, a genuine smile lighting his face. He looked effortlessly charming in a dark blazer over a simple shirt, his eyes, the color of warm earth, sparkling with an inviting warmth. "Elara, you look radiant," he said, pulling out her chair. His voice was a soft caress. "And you, Reese, look perfectly at home," she replied, a comfortable blush rising to her cheeks. As they settled in, a sense of ease descended. It wasn't like a first date where questions felt stilted and conversations were carefully navigated. With Reese, it felt like picking up a conversation that had been paused, not ended. They talked about the manuscript, of course, delving into its historical context, the possible origins of its tales, and the subtle nuances of its language. But soon their discussion branched out. "So, what brought you to Willow Creek, Riss?" Elara asked, stirring her lamb stew, the aroma rich and inviting. He leaned back, a thoughtful expression on his face. "A little bit of fate, a little bit of design, I suppose. I'm a wanderer by nature, though perhaps that's too romantic a term for what I do. I work as an archivist, but not in the traditional sense. I seek out forgotten collections, help people organize and preserve their family histories, or sometimes, as with a manuscript, authenticate and understand unique pieces. I travel for these projects." He paused, his gaze softening as he looked at her. Willow Creek was simply meant to be a stop on the way to a larger collection in the next county. But then I found your shop and, well, it felt like coming home. The words, spoken so simply, resonated deeply within Elara. She felt a warmth spread through her chest, a quiet understanding. "I know that feeling," she confessed, her voice a little softer than she intended. "My shop, the Storyteller's Nook, was meant to be a temporary venture when I first moved here. I'd spent years working in larger city libraries, feeling a bit lost in the sheer volume, a cog in a big machine. I wanted a place where stories could breathe, where they could be truly cherished, not just cataloged. And Willow Creek, with its quiet charm and deep roots, just welcomed me." "It has that effect," Reese agreed, his eyes holding hers. "Like the town itself has a story to tell, and it chooses its listeners carefully." They spoke of their childhoods, Elara's quiet upbringing surrounded by books, fostered by parents who encouraged her vivid imagination. Reese's more nomadic early years, moving often with his academic parents, which instilled in him a love for discovery and the unique character of different places. He shared anecdotes of dusty libraries in forgotten towns, of uncovering hidden letters in old attics, and the thrill of piecing together narratives from disparate fragments. Elara, in turn, described the joy of matching a reader with the perfect book, the satisfaction of restoring a tattered volume, and the quiet magic she found in the everyday rhythm of her shop. Hours seemed to melt away. The lamb stew was delicious, the wine a perfect complement, but it was the conversation that truly nourished them. They discovered a shared love for the scent of rain on dry earth, for the sound of crackling fires, and for the quiet wisdom of ancient trees. They laughed at silly anecdotes, shared moments of vulnerability about past disappointments, and found comfort in the recognition of their similar souls. As the restaurant slowly emptied and the soft lamplight cast longer shadows, Reese reached across the table, his hand gently covering hers. His touch was warm and reassuring, sending a shiver of pleasant awareness through her. "Elara," he began, his voice a low rumble, "I truly feel as though I've known you for years. It's a remarkable feeling." She met his gaze, her heart fluttering. "I feel it too, Reese, like we've been walking parallel paths and finally they've converged." He squeezed her hand lightly. "And I hope they continue to walk together for a while yet." They left the Whispering Spoon, the cool night air a welcome contrast to the warmth of the restaurant and their conversation. Reese walked her back to her small cottage, nestled behind the main square. The moon was a sliver in the inky sky, casting a gentle glow on the cobblestone path. The only sounds were their footsteps and the distant chirping of crickets. At her doorstep, they paused. The silence between them was not empty, but full of unspoken sentiments. "Thank you, Reese," Elara said, looking up at him. "Tonight was wonderful." "The pleasure was all mine, Elara, truly." He hesitated for a moment, then leaned down and gently kissed her cheek. It was a soft, chaste touch, yet it sent a warmth radiating through her. "Good night, Elara." "Good night, Reese." She watched him walk away, his silhouette disappearing into the shadows of the square. As she stepped inside her cottage, the air still humming with the memory of his touch, she knew that Maeve had been right. This was indeed a story in the making, and she was eager to turn the next page. The next morning, Alara found herself humming a cheerful tune as she opened the storyteller's nook. The world outside seemed a little brighter, the scent of coffee a little richer. She moved with a renewed lightness, anticipating the day, and perhaps another visit from Reese. And she didn't have to wait long. Later that afternoon, the bell above the door chimed, and there he was, a book in hand, a comfortable smile on his face. "Good afternoon, Alara," he greeted, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "I hope I'm not interrupting your peace." "Never, Reese," she replied, her heart doing a little skip. "Come in. What treasure have you brought today?" He held up a slim volume, its cover faded but the title still legible. "AIM Whispers of the Cairning. A collection of local legends from the Scottish Highlands. I thought you might appreciate the way they weave history with myth." Alara's eyes lit up. "Oh, Reese, you know my weaknesses all too well." She took the book, her fingers brushing his again, a familiar spark igniting. "Would you like some tea? I just brewed a fresh pot of Earl Grey." "That would be lovely, thank you." He settled into one of the armchairs while Alara prepared the tea, the comfortable silence between them a testament to their growing ease. They spent the next hour poring over the book, discussing the origins of the legends, comparing them to similar tales from other cultures, and marveling at the enduring power of storytelling. Reese shared insights into the linguistic nuances of the Old Gaelic, while Alara offered perspectives on the psychological archetypes embedded within the myths. It was a dance of minds, perfectly choreographed. "You know," Reese said, closing the book gently, "I've been thinking about that manuscript you're working on, the one that brought me here. I wonder if it might be interesting to visit the local historical society archive. Sometimes there are overlooked local records, old parish registers, or even newspaper clippings that can shed light on the obscure figures or places mentioned in such texts." Alara's eyes widened with delight. "That's a wonderful idea, Riss. I've been meaning to get over there, but with the shop, it's hard to find the time. Would you like to go together?" "I'd like that very much, Alara," he replied, his gaze warm and direct. "How about Saturday? We could make a day of it, explore the archives, and then perhaps a picnic by the old mill pond." "A picnic sounds absolutely perfect," she agreed, feeling a surge of happiness. The thought of spending an entire day with him, delving into history, and enjoying the simple beauty of Willow Creek filled her with a sense of quiet contentment. Over the next few days, their connection deepened further. Reese stopped by the shop each afternoon, not always with a book, but sometimes just to chat, to share a cup of tea, or to simply enjoy the quiet company. He listened intently when she spoke, his eyes reflecting a genuine interest that made her feel truly seen. She, in turn, found herself opening up to him in ways she hadn't with anyone else, sharing her dreams for the shop, her quiet anxieties, and the profound joy she found in the world of books. He told her more about his travels, the isolated beauty of the Scottish Isles where he'd spent a summer restoring a family library, the bustling energy of Parisian archives, and the serene quiet of a monastery in Italy where he'd catalogued ancient texts. He spoke of his own longing for a place to truly settle, a sense of belonging he hadn't quite found yet. "It's funny," he mused one afternoon, gazing out the shop window at the sun-dappled square. "I've always been drawn to the stories of roots and origins, to understanding where things come from. But my own life has been a series of departures, of always moving on." He turned to her, a hint of vulnerability in his eyes. "Sometimes I wonder if I'll ever find my own nook to settle into." Alara felt a pang in her chest. She understood that feeling of searching, of wanting to belong. "Perhaps," she said softly, "it's not about finding a single place, but about finding the right people. A story can have many settings, but it's the characters who truly bring it to life." Her gaze held his, a silent invitation to consider the possibility that he might be finding his nook right here with her. He held her gaze, a profound understanding passing between them. A gentle smile touched his lips. "Perhaps you're right, Alara. Perhaps you're very right." Saturday arrived, a crisp, clear autumn day, perfect for exploring. Reese picked her up in a classic, well-maintained vintage car, a charming detail that perfectly suited him. They drove to the Historical Society, a grand old building with tall windows and the scent of old paper clinging to its very bricks. Inside, they were a formidable team. Reese, with his methodical approach and keen eye for detail, and Alara, with her intuitive understanding of narrative and her ability to spot connections others might miss. They spent hours poring over old ledgers, faded maps, and brittle newspaper clippings. They found fascinating tidbits that hinted at the local lore mentioned in Reese's manuscript. A brief mention of a whispering stone on a farmer's property, an old legend about a hidden spring, a local family with an unusual patronymic that matched a name in the text. "This is incredible, Reese," Ilara exclaimed, her voice barely a whisper in the quiet archive, holding up a delicate hand-drawn map. "Look, this shows the old shepherd's trail, and it leads directly to where the manuscript describes the gathering of shadows." Reese leaned closer, his arm brushing hers as he pointed to a faded landmark. "And this forgotten well here, if we cross-reference it with the local geological surveys, it might be an actual historical site, not just a mythical one." Their excitement was palpable, a shared intellectual thrill that deepened their bond. They were so engrossed that they barely noticed the time until the archivist gently reminded them the society was closing. "Well," Reese said, gathering their notes, "I think we've made some excellent progress today." He looked at Ilara, his eyes sparkling. "And now for that picnic." They drove to the old mill pond, a tranquil spot surrounded by tall rustling reeds and ancient willow trees whose branches dipped gracefully into the water. Reese had packed a delightful picnic: crusty bread, artisanal cheese, crisp apples, and a thermos of fragrant herbal tea. They sat on a plaid blanket, the sun warm on their faces, the gentle sound of water flowing over the old mill wheel providing a soothing soundtrack. They talked about everything and nothing: the beauty of the changing leaves, the cleverness of the local ducks, the serendipity of their meeting. Ilara found herself sharing more personal stories, anecdotes from her childhood, dreams she held close to her heart. Reese reciprocated, revealing a quiet humor she hadn't fully seen before, and a thoughtful perspective on life that resonated deeply with her own. "You know," Reese said, gazing at the reflections in the pond, "I've spent so much of my life chasing fragments of stories, piecing together the past. But sitting here with you, it feels like I'm finally living a story of my own, a present one." Ilara's heart swelled with tenderness. She reached out, her fingers gently covering his, which rested on the blanket between them. "I feel that too, Reese. Like the pages of my own life are finally truly turning, not just lying still on a shelf." He turned his hand, intertwining their fingers. His grip was firm, comforting. "I don't want this chapter to end, Ilara." "Nor I," she whispered, leaning her head slightly on his shoulder as they watched the sunlight dance on the water. The world felt utterly peaceful, safe, and filled with a quiet, profound joy. In the days that followed, their connection grew like a strong, steady vine. Reese made Willow Creek his temporary home, finding a small cottage not far from Ilara's own. He continued his work on the manuscript, but his days were increasingly woven into the fabric of Ilara's life. He would help her organize a new shipment of books, offer a strong arm for moving heavy boxes, or simply sit in the corner of the shop, reading quietly, his presence a comforting anchor. They took long walks through the changing autumn landscape, sharing stories and quiet observations. They cooked meals together in Ilara's cozy kitchen, the scent of spices and laughter filling the air. He showed her old stargazing charts he'd collected, and they spent an evening bundled up, identifying constellations above the silent fields. She introduced him to the local characters of Willow Creek, and he charmed them all with his gentle demeanor and genuine interest. One rainy afternoon, they were huddled in Ilara's shop, the soft patter against the window panes creating a soothing rhythm. Reese was helping her reshelve a particularly disorganized section of classical literature. He found a first edition of a beloved collection of fairy tales, its pages yellowed and brittle. "This reminds me," he said, turning the delicate pages. "My grandmother used to read me these stories. She had a copy just like this. She believed that even the darkest tales held glimmers of hope, and that true love always found a way, even if it took many trials." He looked up at Ilara, a thoughtful expression on his face. "Do you believe that, Ilara? In true love?" Ilara paused, holding a stack of Austen novels. The question, so direct and earnest, caught her a little off guard. She had always believed in love in stories, in the profound connections between characters. But in her own life, it had always felt a little more elusive, something she admired from a distance. I want to," she admitted, her voice soft. "I believe in connection, in deep understanding, in shared dreams. And I think those are the foundations of something truly lasting." She met his gaze, feeling a surge of courage. "I think," I think I'm starting to believe it more and more, Reese. A gentle smile spread across his face, radiating warmth. He reached out, his hand tenderly cupping her cheek. Ilara, he murmured, his thumb stroking her skin. You are the most enchanting story I've ever encountered, and I would be honored if I could be a part of its next chapter. Her heart did more than flutter. It soared. The world outside, with its gentle rain, seemed to hold its breath. All the quiet moments, the shared laughter, the comfortable silences, the deepening understanding, they had all led to this. To this moment of simple, profound declaration. Reese, she breathed, leaning into his touch. There's nothing I would want more. He leaned in slowly, his eyes searching hers, asking for permission. Ilara closed her eyes, her lips parting slightly in anticipation. And then, his lips met hers. It was a kiss that was both tender and deep, a culmination of all the unspoken words, all the shared history, and all the hopeful future. It tasted of Earl Grey tea, old books, and the sweet, undeniable promise of a love story truly unfolding. When they finally broke apart, breathless, the world seemed to have shifted, if only subtly. The air in the shop felt charged, shimmering with a new kind of magic. Ilara looked into Reese's eyes, seeing not just affection, but a deep, unwavering devotion. She felt a profound sense of peace, a feeling of finally being home, not just in her shop, but within herself, with him. Stay, she whispered, her voice barely audible, echoing the yearning in her heart. Reese's smile was soft, reassuring. I'm not going anywhere, Ilara, he promised, his thumb still caressing her cheek. Not if you'll have me. And in that moment, Ilara knew, with a certainty that settled deep into her bones, that her story, far from being just a series of cherished pages, was now a vibrant, living narrative, unfolding beautifully, hand in hand with the man who understood its every nuanced whisper. The adventure had only just begun. Ilara's breath hitched, a small, hopeful sound. Her eyes, wide and luminous, met his, and in their depths, Reese saw not just a nascent love, but a profound trust, a willingness to finally step beyond the well-worn paths of her solitary existence. A shy smile bloomed on her face, mirroring the tenderness in his gaze. Oh, Reese, she whispered, the words barely audible, yet brimming with unspoken emotion. She leaned into his touch, her hand finding his, her fingers intertwining with his with an almost instinctive grace. It felt right, utterly and completely right, like a missing piece of a cherished manuscript finally slotted into place. I want you to stay, please. His smile deepened, crinkling the corners of his eyes. He didn't need grand pronouncements. Ilara's quiet sincerity was more powerful than any declaration. He leaned in slowly, giving her ample time to pull away, but she didn't. Instead, her eyes fluttered closed, a silent invitation. His lips met hers, soft as the turning of a well-loved page, a gentle exploration that promised depths yet to be discovered. It wasn't a fervent, passionate kiss, but a tender affirmation, a silent vow exchanged between two souls who had found their home in each other's quiet understanding. When they finally parted, a soft blush dusted Ilara's cheeks, and her heart felt impossibly light, as if freed from a cage she hadn't even realized it was in. Over the next few weeks, their nascent love story unfolded with the quiet grace of a blooming night-flowering jasmine, its fragrance subtle yet intoxicating. Their dates weren't grand or elaborate, but meticulously curated moments of shared joy. They spent an entire Saturday morning wandering through a sprawling antique market, Reese pointing out forgotten tools and Ilara tracing the faded calligraphy on old postcards. They discovered a tiny, independent bookstore tucked away on a cobbled side street, spending hours lost among the stacks, whispering recommendations to each other, their hands brushing as they reached for the same worn volume. Reese, a historian with an almost reverent respect for the past, found endless fascination in Ilara's library. He didn't just visit her at work. He became an honorary resident, often found perched on a stool in the archives, assisting her with cataloging a newly acquired collection of local historical documents, his quiet focus a comforting presence. He understood the hushed reverence of the space, the sacred trust of preserving stories, and Ilara found herself sharing anecdotes about the library's eccentric patrons, the unexpected discoveries hidden in forgotten corners, and the joy of helping someone find exactly the book they needed. Elara, in turn, learned about Rice's own world. He worked as a curator for a small historical museum in the neighboring town, specializing in local heritage and forgotten trades. He spoke with passion about the delicate process of restoring ancient textiles, the thrill of authenticating a rare artifact, and the satisfaction of bringing history to life for visitors. He invited her to the museum for a private tour, after hours, where the exhibits took on a magical, almost living quality in the dim light. She saw his dedication, his gentle hands carefully handling a centuries-old spinning wheel, his eyes alight with the stories each object held. "You speak their language, don't you?" Elara had observed, watching him explain the intricate joinery of an old cabinet. "The language of things that have lived many lives." Rhys had turned to her, a soft smile playing on his lips. "And you, Elara, speak the language of the stories they tell. We're not so different, you and I, both guardians of what endures." Their evenings were a balm, filled with quiet dinners cooked together in Elara's cozy kitchen, the scent of herbs and spices mingling with the faint aroma of old paper that always seemed to cling to her. They'd read aloud to each other, sometimes from a classic novel, sometimes from a rediscovered poem, their voices weaving together like a comfortable melody. Elara found herself laughing more easily, a light, genuine sound that surprised even herself. Rhys had a subtle wit, a dry humor that often caught her off guard, eliciting a delighted giggle. Her best friend, Clara, a vibrant artist with an infectious energy, noticed the change immediately. "You're glowing, Elara," Clara had declared one afternoon over coffee, her eyes sparkling. "Like you've swallowed a particularly luminous fairy light. What's his name?" Elara, blushing fiercely, recounted the story of Rhys, the quiet historian, the man who saw her not as a solitary librarian, but as a keeper of worlds. Clara, usually prone to dramatic pronouncements, listened with a rare softness, a genuine happiness radiating from her. "He sounds perfect for you, my bookish beauty. Someone who appreciates the quiet magic you carry." Elara's world, once a carefully curated collection of comforting routines, was slowly, beautifully expanding. She wasn't abandoning her beloved solitude. Instead, she was finding that shared quietude with Rhys was even more profound, more enriching. He understood her need for stillness, yet gently encouraged her to step outside her comfort zone, always with a reassuring hand, always with a gaze that told her she was cherished. One crisp autumn afternoon, Rhys approached Elara with an invitation that, while seemingly innocuous, sent a flutter of nerves through her. "The museum is hosting its annual Heritage Harvest Gala next month," he began, his voice calm as ever, "a fundraiser for our new conservation wing. There will be donors, local dignitaries, a bit of a social whirl. I'd love for you to come with me, Elara, as my date." Elara's fingers, which had been idly tracing the spine of a leather-bound book, stilled. A gala. A social whirl. Her heart, usually so steady, gave a small lurch. Her comfort zone was the quiet hum of the library, the rustle of pages, the gentle murmur of scholarly conversations. Large gatherings forced small talk, the expectation of being on. These were foreign, almost intimidating territories. She imagined herself a fish out of water, a quiet book among a vibrant, glittering collection of modern art. "Oh," she managed, her voice smaller than she intended. "A gala. That sounds lively." Rhys, ever perceptive, noticed her subtle withdrawal, the slight tightening around her eyes. He reached out, gently taking her hand. "It can be, yes, but it's also a chance to see the museum in a different light, to celebrate the work we do. And," he added, his thumb stroking the back of her hand, "it would mean a great deal to me to have you there, by my side. You don't have to be lively, Elara. You just have to be yourself. I'll be right there. You just have to be yourself. I'll be right there." His reassurance was a soft balm, but the apprehension lingered. She valued her privacy, her quiet dignity. The idea of being scrutinized even subtly by a room full of strangers brought an uncomfortable self-consciousness. Yet, looking into Rhys's patient, understanding eyes, she knew she couldn't refuse. Not when he asked with such sincerity, not when she felt such a powerful pull towards him. "All right," she said, a nervous smile touching her lips. "I'll come, but You have to promise to rescue me if I start discoursing on the merits of Dewey Decimal Classification to a bewildered philanthropist." Reese chuckled, a warm, resonant sound. "Deal, though I suspect your quiet charm will be far more captivating than any speech." The weeks leading up to the gala were a gentle foray into new experiences for Alara. Reese helped her pick out an elegant deep emerald green dress that complemented her eyes and made her feel surprisingly confident. He taught her a few basic ballroom steps in her living room, their laughter echoing softly as she stumbled over his feet. He spoke to her about the history of the museum, the notable patrons she might meet, easing her anxiety with knowledge and context, transforming the unknown into something familiar. On the night of the gala, as they stepped into the grand hall of the museum, transformed by soft lighting and orchestral music, Alara felt a wave of dizzying wonder, mingled with her initial trepidation. The room was indeed a social whirl, a kaleidoscope of elegant attire, hushed conversations, and the clinking of glasses. For a moment she felt overwhelmed, her instinct to retreat into herself almost irresistible. But then Ria's hand found hers, a firm, comforting squeeze. He leaned down, his breath warm against her ear. "You look beautiful, Alara, and you belong here just as much as any artifact." His words grounded her. She took a deep breath, straightened her shoulders, and allowed him to lead her through the room. Reese was a gracious host, introducing her to colleagues and donors with quiet pride, always ensuring she felt included, never pressured. He would subtly steer conversations towards topics he knew she'd be interested in, or simply stand by her side, a silent anchor in the swirling current of social interaction. As the evening progressed, Alara found herself relaxing, even enjoying herself. She discovered a shared passion for antique maps with a retired history professor, and engaged in a surprisingly lively debate about the ethics of repatriating artifacts with a young archaeologist. She realized that while the setting was grander, the essence of connection was the same as in her quiet library: the sharing of knowledge, the spark of curiosity, the joy of mutual understanding. She even managed to avoid any Dewey Decimal lectures. Later, as they stood on a quiet balcony overlooking the museum gardens, the cool night air a welcome contrast to the warmth inside, Alara turned to Reese, her heart full. "Thank you," she said softly, "for bringing me here, for helping me see that my world isn't as small as I sometimes make it." Reese smiled, his gaze tender. "Your world, Alara, has always been vast and beautiful. I just wanted to show you it has many doors, and you can open any of them, with me by your side." He paused, then his expression grew slightly more serious. "There's something else, Alara, that I wanted to share with you, something that ties into all this." He explained that the new conservation wing wasn't just about preserving existing artifacts. It was also about a major new initiative: the creation of a digital archive of local historical documents and oral histories, making them accessible to a wider public. It was an ambitious project, requiring meticulous research, delicate handling of fragile materials, and a deep understanding of cataloging and information management. "And," he continued, his eyes meeting hers, "I immediately thought of you. Your expertise, your passion for preserving stories, your meticulous eye, you would be invaluable, Alara, not just as a consultant, but as a co-lead. It would mean taking on a significant responsibility, working closely with the museum, perhaps even a brief sabbatical from the library, if you were interested. But it's a chance to build something truly lasting, to—" Alara listened, her mind reeling. A co-lead on a major historical project? A sabbatical? It was a monumental proposition, exhilarating and terrifying in equal measure. Her library was her sanctuary, her routine a comforting rhythm. This project would demand change, expansion, a leap into the unknown. But the thought of working so closely with Reese, on something so meaningful, something that combined her love of stories and preservation with his vision for the future of history, was incredibly tempting. The fear of change, of stepping too far from her quiet haven, was a familiar whisper in her mind. But Reese's proposal wasn't about leaving her world behind. It was about expanding it, intertwining their professional passions just as their personal lives were intertwining. It was a testament to his belief in her, his understanding of her unique strengths. She looked at him, really looked at him, and saw not just the kind, gentle man she was falling deeply in love with, but a partner who truly saw and valued her, who championed her growth. "Reese," she began, her voice filled with a mixture of awe and excitement. That's an incredible offer. It's daunting, but yes, I'd be honored. I'd love to work with you on this." His relief was palpable, a soft smile spreading across his face. He gently squeezed her hand again. "I knew you would. Our stories, Alara, were always meant to be woven together." The digital archive project became the beautiful crucible of their shared life. Alara secured a 3-month sabbatical from the library, a decision that initially felt like stepping off a cliff, but quickly became an exhilarating flight. Her days were now a dynamic blend of meticulous research in the museum's archives, collaborating with Reese on design and implementation strategies, and even conducting initial oral history interviews with some of the town's oldest residents. Working side by side, their individual strengths shone, complementing each other perfectly. Alara's systematic approach to cataloging, her deep knowledge of literary history and archival best practices, ensured the project's foundation was robust. Rice's vision, his keen understanding of historical context, and his ability to communicate the project's importance propelled it forward. Lunch breaks often turned into brainstorming sessions, and late evenings in the quiet museum offices often ended with them sharing a takeout meal, talking not just about work, but about their day, their dreams, their deepening feelings. Alara discovered a new layer of confidence within herself. She found her voice in meetings, eloquently advocating for user accessibility and ethical data preservation. She delighted in the process of translating complex historical narratives into engaging digital content. And through it all, Reese was her steady partner, her confidant, her greatest cheerleader. He never overshadowed her. Instead, he amplified her, creating a space where she could truly flourish. One particularly rainy afternoon, they were poring over a collection of brittle 19th century ledgers, documenting the transactions of a long-defunct general store. Alara carefully transcribed faded entries while Reese cross-referenced them with old town maps. The rhythmic patter of rain against the window pane created a cozy, intimate atmosphere. "Look at this," Alara murmured, tracing a line in elegant copperplate script. "A customer named E. Thorne bought 20 yards of calico and a pound of coffee beans every Tuesday for 15 years. Imagine the stories behind that, the rituals, the quiet constants of a life." Reese leaned closer, his arm brushing hers. "It's precisely those quiet constants, Alara, that make up the fabric of our lives, isn't it? The steady rhythms, the reliable comfort." He turned to her then, his gaze intense, yet infinitely gentle. "Like you've become my most cherished constant." Alara's heart fluttered. The air around them seemed to thicken with unspoken emotion. She met his gaze, a quiet understanding passing between them, a silent acknowledgement of the profound shift in their relationship. They had moved beyond falling in love. They were building a life, carefully and intentionally, piece by precious piece. A few weeks later, the digital archive project reached a significant milestone. The completion of its pilot phase, ready for a soft launch to a select group of stakeholders. To celebrate, Reese arranged a quiet dinner for just the two of them at a charming rustic restaurant they had discovered during one of their first dates. The evening was perfect. The food was delicious, the wine flowed gently, and their conversation danced from the project's success to their shared hopes and dreams. Alara felt utterly content, wrapped in the warmth of Reese's presence, the quiet strength of their bond. As the waiter cleared their dessert plates, Reese reached across the table, taking her hand. His fingers traced the lines on her palm, a gesture that had become incredibly familiar, incredibly comforting. "Alara," he began, his voice soft, almost a murmur. "This past year, it's been the most extraordinary chapter of my life. You've opened my eyes to so many new possibilities, brought so much joy into my world. You understand me in a way no one else ever has, and you make me a better man." He paused, his eyes searching hers, filled with an emotion so deep, so profound, it took Alara's breath away. He reached into the inner pocket of his jacket and pulled out a small, antique wooden box, intricately carved with delicate floral patterns. It looked like something that belonged in a museum, or perhaps in Alara's own carefully curated collection of treasures. He opened it, and nestled within a bed of velvet was not a glittering diamond, but something far more personal, far more them. It was a delicate, intricately detailed silver ring, designed to resemble a miniature open book, with tiny, almost imperceptible pages. On one of the silver pages, a single minuscule sapphire glimmered like a drop of ink. "Elara, my dearest Elara," he said, his voice a little husky with emotion. "You are the most beautiful story I've ever had the privilege to read, and the most compelling one I could ever hope to write. Will you continue this story with me? Will you marry me?" Elara gasped, a joyous sound that escaped her lips unbidden. Tears welled in her eyes, blurring the candlelight, blurring the beautiful, unique ring. It was perfect. More than perfect. It was a tangible representation of everything she held dear, everything they shared. The book, the sapphire ink, the promise of endless pages yet to be written. The quiet, reserved Elara, who had always found solace in the predictable narratives of fiction, was now faced with the most thrilling, unpredictable, and wonderful reality. Her heart swelled with an overwhelming wave of love and gratitude. "Oh, Reese," she choked out, her voice thick with emotion. "Yes, 1,000 times yes, I will marry you." He slid the ring onto her finger, where it settled perfectly, a beautiful testament to their unique love story. It felt as if it had always belonged there. They didn't need a loud celebration or an audience. The quiet joy, the profound connection between them, was more than enough. In that moment, surrounded by the gentle hum of the restaurant, Elara felt as if every story she had ever loved, every poem she had ever cherished, had culminated in this perfect, breathtaking chapter. Their engagement was met with delight by Clara, who immediately began sketching ideas for a literary-themed wedding, and with quiet approval from their respective colleagues. True to their nature, Elara and Reese opted for an intimate affair. The ceremony was held in the museum gardens, beneath the ancient oak tree, its branches reaching like benevolent arms towards the clear autumn sky. Elara wore a simple, elegant gown, and carried a bouquet of wildflowers and sprigs of rosemary, symbolizing remembrance and love. Reese, looking impossibly handsome in a classic suit, recited a poem he had written for her, a tender ode to the beauty of stories and the solace of finding one's true narrative. The reception was a cozy gathering in the museum's sunlit conservatory, filled with laughter, good food, and the soft murmur of cherished conversations. Instead of a traditional guest book, they had a vintage typewriter, inviting guests to type a chapter heading or a short epilogue for their life story. Their first dance was a quiet waltz, practiced diligently in Elara's living room, their movements a graceful testament to their synchronicity. Years passed, weaving together like the threads of an intricate tapestry. The Digital Archive project, a resounding success, became a beloved resource, a testament to their shared vision. Elara eventually returned to her beloved library, but with a renewed sense of purpose, often collaborating with the museum on new initiatives. Reese continued his work as a curator, his passion for history burning brighter than ever, knowing he always had Elara to share his discoveries with. Their home, a charming cottage nestled among old trees, became a sanctuary of shared stories. Books lined every wall, spilling onto tables, creating cozy nooks for reading and quiet contemplation. There were always 2 mugs of tea on the kitchen counter in the morning, 2 comfortable armchairs by the fireplace, 2 sets of hands tending to the small, thriving garden. On quiet evenings they would often sit together, Elara curled up in her armchair, Reese beside her, reading, sometimes aloud, sometimes in companionable silence. His hand would often reach for hers, his thumb tracing the subtle curve of her engagement ring, the tiny silver book now a familiar, comforting weight on her finger. "Remember that old ledger?" Elara might say, looking up from her book, a soft smile on her lips. "The one with E. Thorn and her calico and coffee beans." Reese would close his own book, his eyes warm. The quiet constants, the steady rhythms. She would nod, leaning her head against his shoulder. "Our rhythm." He would press a kiss to her hair, the scent of her, of old paper and lavender, a comfort he would never tire of. "Our story, Elara, and it's still unfolding, page by beautiful page." And in those moments Elara knew, with a certainty that had only deepened over time, that her story was no longer just a series of cherished pages. It was a vibrant, living narrative, unfolding beautifully, hand in hand with the man who understood its every nuanced whisper. A story filled with quiet constants, profound love, and the promise of endless, wonderful chapters yet to be written. The adventure indeed had only just begun, and it was the most heartwarming story she could ever have imagined.